Okay, so I wanted to do a stream tonight. I was not very busy at work today, and I was reading a lot of articles, and I was actually reading a lot of really interesting articles that were basically hitting on a lot of the same themes and the same topics that I've been kind of bringing up and interested in lately, mostly on that blog. It's called The American Conservative, and I've been following Rod Dreher's column, and I don't agree with him on everything, but I think a lot of his takes are actually pretty good, and I like the format of the blog. It's kind of like reminds me of Steve Saylor's blog, the whole format of it, where he's basically updating multiple times a day, and he's like giving commentary on everything that's happening politically and on the internet. And the comment section is, they get a ton of comments. People are writing these really long, thoughtful comments, and I like that format. Hey, people in the chat, thanks for coming in. Tom, I feel like you're always the first one there. I'll get on the camera later. Don't harass me or I'll ban you. Okay. But I am not on camera because I wanted to show you some sweet artwork that is, so this painting is St. Augustine as a bishop, and he's got his burning heart. And the reason I wanted to show this is because today is his feast day, and he's one of my, Paul Tuck's here, sweet. Thanks for showing up, that's pretty cool. He's one of my favorite saints because I happened to read the Confessions a few years ago, and that was kind of my, I think, very first introduction to that, even any type of Christian thought, or and what I like about Saint Augustine, I don't know, however you want to say it, is he was trained in like this very classical education, like Roman style, basically pagan education. I believe he was a lawyer. Don't quote me on that. Maybe I may be wrong about that. But yeah, he was trained in rhetoric by all of those, Roman people. And he basically, his mother actually was a Christian, but his father was a pagan, and he led a very debauched life as a young man. And then he was kind of like the Roushvi of his time. Like, he had a lot of problems with sleeping around with women and just stealing for fun and all sorts of terrible things. And he basically, in the Confessions, it's what it sounds like. He's talking about all of the horrible, degenerate things he did when he was young, and how he should have known better, basically, and how he doesn't want to do that anymore. And he just basically had this huge conversion, huge turnaround. And yeah, so the burning, you're probably wondering what that burning heart was. And it actually comes from chapter 9 of the Confessions. And the quote is, "Thou had pierced our heart with thy love, and we carried thy words, as it were, thrust through our vitals." And yeah, there's basically a lot of reference. Yeah, I don't think it's actually the Sacred Heart, because what you're thinking of is the Sacred Heart of Jesus, where it's that image of Jesus with the burning heart. I think it's related, but I don't think it's the exact same thing. I could be wrong. I don't know that much about this, but it's interesting. So yeah, I'm just going to show a couple more paintings of his. And I highly recommend going and reading the Confessions, because could be very life-changing. So I'm trying to see if there's any other. Oh yeah, there's some more symbolism. I don't know how well you can see the painting, but at the bottom, he's got some of the heretical books. This is Pelagius at the bottom. Wait, wasn't Pelagius a heretic, or am I mixing him up with someone else? Hold on. Yeah. So Pelagius was basically a heretic, and he fought against a lot of heretics his whole life. He was against that. And the other one, it looks like it says Julianus. I'm not sure who that is. Maybe another heretic. Okay, I'm gonna move on. This is one of Caravaggio's depictions of him as a scholarly bishop. He's got the bishop's mitre in the background. And he always has a beard. And a lot of times, yeah, he'll have books he's writing because he was such a wonderful writer. This one, I actually saw this for the first time today, and I really, really liked it. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit so we can kind of see. But yeah, there he is at his writing desk. He's dressed, looks like he's dressed as a friar, and he's got the books. I like this one. It's very, very Roman looking. Oops. And there's another, this one, that reminds me a lot of the Caravaggio. They're very similar. And he's actually, I believe this black outfit he's wearing was the same habit that the Augustinian friars would wear. So he's either wearing like this all black, almost looks like I thought that was, someone was mixing him up with St. Benedict at first, because the Benedictines always wear black too. But I guess the Augustinian friars wore that too. So he's either wearing that or like these really rich robe. Yeah, he's got the black on there too. That one's cool too. I think, let's see what he's doing. Oh, it's not very good quality, unfortunately. Maybe he's kicking some heretics' butts in this one. And then this one is probably my favorite. It's Fra Angelico. And this is his conversion, where he's obviously really upset. I don't know who that is in the background. It kind of looks like St. Jerome or something, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I love Fra Angelico. He's one of the best painters ever. And he's a saint, so it's like a double whammy. Okay, so, oh yeah, something else that's relevant that I wanted to show. I'm going to, okay. Stop sharing. I'm gonna share a different screen for you. I don't know how you switch to, oh yeah. So I wanted to show this. Kind of funny. Apparently that, I don't know if any of you guys follow Father quote, I don't think he's even a real priest, Father James Martin on Twitter. He's basically like this gay priest who's always posting really heretical, awful things. And this is just funny. Like, I don't think Saint Augustine really looked like this. I guess we don't really know, but he was from North Africa. This guy is definitely a sub-Saharan African, so I think Father James was trying to, prove a point there, but I don't think it's actually right. Yeah, he was supposed to be a Berber, so he would have been, kind of more Middle Eastern looking. But yeah, people like to appropriate whatever they want. So, okay, I'm gonna move on. So, like I said, I was reading Rod Dreher's column a whole bunch today. Okay, I'm gonna zoom in here. Oops, why is that happening? I hate these ads that pop up. I have to wait 2 seconds before I get rid of it, sorry. Okay. I wanted to read this. Solzhenitsyn, I don't know how to pronounce it very well, in a 1970s essay collection called From Under the Rubble, wrote that the worst thing about the Soviet system was not its material oppression. A man can live in such conditions without harm to his spiritual essence, says Solzhenitsyn. Rather, the Soviet system is unique in world history because it compels everyone to participate in the general conscious lie. He went on to say that the most essential task is not achieving political freedom, but winning one's inner freedom from entanglement in the lie. Those who voluntarily runs with the hounds of falsehood will not be able to justify themselves to the living, to the history, to their friends, or to their children. Which is the sacrifice, to go for years without truly breathing, or to begin to breathe. Okay. So the reason why this was, hey Ash, I haven't seen you in a while. The reason I wanted to bring this up was because before I actually even read this, I was reading it this afternoon. I was at a work meeting today. It was like a department-wide meeting, and the head of the department lady, she's newish. I was just kind of maybe I don't want to say overanalyzing, but I was listening really closely to the way she was speaking. And she was basically using the word like pretty much every other word. And she dropped a few F-bombs. She was just swearing a lot, saying like, just not very eloquent. And it just struck me like, shouldn't maybe that be a requirement to have this huge, I mean, this woman's definitely making a lot of money. She's in charge of a lot of people. She's presenting to clients. I don't know if she puts on a different alter ego when she's presenting to clients, but it felt so unprofessional to me that I was just surprised that would be the person they would hire to be in charge of like 100 people. It was kind of astounding. And I guess I've been having like, I just used the word like, I have been trying to use it less. And I know I'm guilty of all these things too, but yeah, I was just thinking, when I'm with coworkers and stuff and people make, lewd comments or they're cursing every other word and all of these things, I feel like I'm still required to laugh at it and be really lighthearted and not criticize it, because otherwise I'll basically be accused of being a stuck-up prude. But on the other hand, I do feel really conflicted about it, because I do want to better myself, and I'm not claiming to be perfect at all, and I have to work really hard to make sure I'm not cursing too. But it's something we should, strive for. We don't want to be like everyone else, right? Yeah, it's just this conflict, and I feel like I just said like I think that's basically the point that Rod Dreher is making. And you think you're better than us? No, I don't think I'm better. I'm trying to be conscious about the way the way I do present myself, the way I'm speaking, and just I would like to improve. I would like to improve. Vox Day Respecter, I basically do ignore people at work. I'm always paranoid that people are gonna start getting suspicious that I'm not, being very social and whatever. But I also can kind of get away with it because, I'm a web developer, and people in those kind of positions are basically notorious for being introverted and not talking to anyone. But it's also can be a little difficult when you work at a company where people are very social, and it's one of these hip young companies where you're supposed to make that your social life. Like I think that's ultimately what they expect. But on the other hand, can they really fire me for not being social enough? If I'm doing a good job on my actual job function, I'm not so sure about that. But yeah, it's what Rod is saying here. It's, if you go along with it, you must shun here. Like what he's saying, at the point where this is actually quoting from Solzhenitsyn. Depending upon his horizons, his life experience, and his education, each person will have his own conception of the line where the public and state lie begins. Some will see it as being altogether remote from him, while another will experience it as a rope. Oops. Sorry. So now hi. It doesn't even, okay, sorry about that. You must shun that part of the lie that is, sorry, I keep losing my spot. Okay. Each person will have his own conception of the line where the public and state lie begins. Some will see it as being altogether remote from him, while another will experience it as a rope already cutting into his neck. And that's how I feel. The rope isn't quite cutting into my neck, but it's getting there. And there at the point where you yourself, in all honesty, see the borderline of the lie is where you must refuse to submit to that lie. You must shun that part of the lie that is clear and obvious to you. And that's kind of the question I'm asking. It's if people are making weird comments that I morally don't agree with, what do I do in that situation? Because if I don't kind of laugh, and I'm the type of person that does laugh at people's dumb jokes or people, jokes that aren't funny, or I'll just start laughing just to be polite. That's just my personality. I've always been that way. People in third grade would write comments that I laughed a lot. That's just how I am. So it feels weird if I have to suddenly change my behavior, but I don't want to be this person who's going along with lies and, cucking, basically. So what does it mean not to lie? It doesn't mean going around preaching the truth at the top of your voice. It doesn't even mean muttering what you think in an undertone. It simply means not saying what you don't think. And that includes not whispering, not opening your mouth, not raising your hand, not casting your vote, not feigning a smile. That's where it gets tough for me. Not lending your presence, not standing up, and not cheering. See, this is where it gets really tricky because I feel like in my job, it's very, woke. And at some point, I'm going to run into these issues if I haven't really already. Here's another example. I had to do a sexual harassment training today, and it was just on the computer. And it was one of those things where you look at a bunch of slides, and then you look at a bunch of slides, and you have to select the right answers. And you know what the quote unquote correct answers are, but is that submitting to a lie? Just doing that? Because if I refused to do this, I would get in trouble. It's required. But it does feel like I'm giving in certain ways, because I don't necessarily agree with what the correct answer is, but that's company policy. We all work in different fields and move in different walks of life. Those who work in the humanities and all who are studying find themselves much more profoundly and inextricably involved in lying and participating in the lie. They are fenced in by layer after layer of lies. Absolutely. In the technical science, it can be more ingeniously avoided, and that's where I am. I have a technical job. But even so, one cannot escape daily entering some door, attending some meeting, putting one signature, and I did have to sign this, to something, or undertaking some obligation, which is a cowardly submission to the lie. The lie surrounds us at work, on our way to work, in our leisure pursuits, in everything we see, hear, and read. Wow, this is really resonating. And just as varied as the forms of the lie are the forms of resisting it. Whoever steals his heart and opens his eyes to the tentacles of the lie will in each situation, every day and every hour, realize what he must do. And this is a problem. It's even just walking in the door, you are submitting to the lie. And what was actually really disturbing to me about that harassment training that I had to do today, there were subtle, this is the first time I've seen subtle, and they're kind of, it seems like they're slowly sneaking in subtle references to transgender thing about how it's illegal to discriminate against transgender people, and that would probably include, misgendering someone. And yeah, Olaf, you're right. He's talking about Soviet Russia, but the same thing is happening. It's pretty bad. Yes, it is a terrible thought. In the beginning, the holes in the filter are so narrow, so very narrow. Can a person with so many needs really squeeze through such a narrow opening? Let me reassure him, it is only that way at the entrance, at the very beginning. Very soon, not far along, the holes slacken and relax their grip and eventually cease to grip you altogether. Yes, of course, it will cost you canceled dissertations, annulled degrees, demotions, dismissals, expulsions, sometimes even deportations. But you will not be cast into flames or crushed by a tank, and you will still have food and shelter. But the funny thing is that almost, I've talked with Olaf about this a little bit. He's basically said that this kind of losing your job and being forced to work at Walmart is almost worse than having like a public execution or something. Because at least with that, you would, get the crown of martyrdom and people would remember it. Or like Solzhenitsyn, where they throw him into the gulag and then he gets to write a book about it. Yeah, you're right, Tom. Suburbs are gulags, but there's no glory. There's no glory like there is in real martyrdom or being a real dissident. Even though, those things are bad, it's almost like it gives you, it's almost like more dignified. The soft totalitarianism is not, it's not very dignified. This path is the safest and most accessible of all the paths open to us for the average man in the street, but it is also the most effective. Only we, knowing our system, can imagine what will happen when thousands, then tens of thousands of people take this path. But this path is also the most moral. We shall be commencing this liberation and purification with our own souls. Before we purify the country, we shall have purified ourselves. This is the only correct historical order. For what is the good of purifying our country's air if we ourselves remain dirty? People will say, how unfair on the young. After all, if you don't utter the obligatory lie at your social science exam, you'll be failed and expelled from your institute, and your education and life will be disrupted. Unfair on the young, but whose is the future if not theirs? Who do we expect to form the sacrificial elite? For whose sake do we agonize over the future? We are already old. If they themselves do not build an honest society, they will never see it at all. Then Rod says, part of the Benedict option and part of the general resistance for all of us is training ourselves to identify the general conscious lie and to steel ourselves to resist it. Think hard about this in your own life, how to integrate it into your own life. I mean, how to teach Solzhenitsyn's principle to your children. If you're a churchgoer, think about how to form your own congregation in this principle. If you don't do it now, you will not be able to resist when you're put seriously to the test. It is quite clear where this society is headed. We will all have to live by lies or pay a price for resisting. As Solzhenitsyn says, the price you pay by not resisting the culture of the lie is nothing less than your soul. It's harsh, but it's true. It's true. I'm gonna go to the comments and see what you guys are saying. And yeah, I hate how now, even if you do try to be the hero and draw the line, you don't get credit. You're not martyred, no glory, just unpersoned. Exactly, you just lose your job and then everyone will forget about you. And they know this because they know that with, hard persecution comes glory, or hard martyrdom. Soft totalitarianism is a lot easier for people to pull off. Speaking of, did anyone see that? Did anyone catch any of the VMAs a couple days ago? Like, it felt like something. It felt so foreign, and okay, I'm gonna show you something disturbing. So close your eyes if you're sensitive to this. But this needs to be talked about, and it's actually kind of funny anyway. And you guys might have already seen this. Yeah. Okay. So that was Lizzo. And what's funny about Lizzo is actually she's from my area, and I remember when she was basically nobody, and she was actually like performing on the college radio station I used to work at. So it feels kind of weird to think that I somehow played a small part in her. Like, I didn't actually know that she was super famous now. And there was actually see if I can find it. This clip is really ridiculous. And I thought he's actually pretty funny. I mean, that's a good comment. Even if you don't like him, that's pretty funny. But obviously tongue in cheek. But yeah, that was actually at the BET Awards, so it's maybe a little more tribal than what we're used to. But the VMAs, I believe she was performing in front of like a giant butt. I think that was the VMAs. It's absolutely absurd. Yeah. This is really kind of insane. Let's see.
Why men great till they gotta be great?
Oops. I don't know why that happened. Huh.
I just took a DNA test, turns out I'm 100.
I don't know why this is pausing. Hold on, I'll go to the actual.
That bitch, even when
I'm gonna go to YouTube and okay. This
I'm crying crazy, yeah, I got boy problems, that's the human in me. Bling bling, then I solve them, that's the goddess. You could have had a bad
Yeah, why is there a giant inflatable?
But you holding me back, and that's a sound. I mean, I'm calling you back. Why being great till they gotta be great? Don't text me, turn it straight to monsters. Best friends,
Like-
we got enough for lunch. Shampoo.
Okay, I think you get the idea. Or were you not able to see in that? Oh shoot, that wasn't working. Okay, now you actually do need to see it.
And I'm crying crazy, yeah, I got boy. Problems, that's the human in me. Bling, bling, then I saw them, that's the goddess. You could have had a bad bitch, non-committal. Help me with your car wheel, just a little. You're supposed to hold me down, but you holding me back, and that's a sound. I mean, I'm calling you back.
Okay, anyway, I'll stop. I think you guys get the idea. But yeah, it's crazy. Like, this is actually what's popular. And if I could just like completely avoid it, I wouldn't care so much. But all you have to do is basically drive around and you hear people blasting this music, or you're just walking down the street and you hear it. I don't know how much there really is to say about that, but I do think it's like a new low. A new low. And that's saying a lot. Okay, moving on to something smarter. Hi, how's it going?
Are you streaming?
Yeah,
Hi.
hi,
Hi.
how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Who are you streaming with?
No one?
The American Conservative? What's his name?
Yeah,
Hi.
everyone can see you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, funny. Who's everyone? You said no one.
Yeah, but people are watching. That's how a stream works.
Oh.
I'm not talking to anyone.
Oh.
I'm just talking to people that are watching.
Okay. Well,
What? Can you close the door? What? You want me to stop?
Yeah. Look. Oh, look.
That's cool. What is it?
Huh?
Why does it look so messed up?
Because I was using 1500 degrees on it.
Oh.
It's not well. It's actually not welding, but use solder and put them together. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
These are a bunch of different solders. It's
Cool.
They but use a torch. It's pretty fun.
Nice. You want me to stop?
No, go for it.
Hi, sorry. Okay. Go back to what I was talking about. And I probably shouldn't do this too much longer, but okay, on to the good news. Okay, yeah, this is more from yeah, thanks, Ash. Yeah, last night I watched my 8th grade daughter packing up her school books after finishing her homework. She had been reading Ovid's Metamorphoses. That's 8th grade at Sequitur Classical Academy in Baton Rouge. Tuition at the classical Christian school is about $4,000 a year. And from my perspective, worth every penny. The school operates on a shoestring budget. Blah, blah, blah. I thought about Sequitur just now while reading the British political philosopher John Gray's essay explaining why he believes that the humanities can't be saved in universities. Hey, Olaf, do you think I should just go right to that article? Because it was actually Super interesting. I'm going to go right to it. It was excellent. Why the Humanities Can't Be Saved by John Gray. It's hard to see why any sensible person would enroll in a humanities degree at the present time. Allergies, sorry. A common argument used to be that the humanities taught students how to think. A science degree transmitted knowledge in a particular discipline, while history, philosophy, or English inculcated capacities of critical thinking that could be applied in many areas of life. The humanities embodied a freedom of mind that would be useful whatever students did after they left university. This is not an argument that can be made today. Critical thinking has become a cluster of progressive dogmas which are handed down as if they were self-evident truths. Students learn an intra-academic argot, intersectionality, heteronormativity, and the like, that has zero utility in the world which they will go on to live. They also learn that disagreement in ethics and politics is illegitimate. We all know this. Anyone who departs from the prevailing progressive consensus is not just mistaken, but malevolent. Okay, we know this. Okay. Okay, this is where it gets interesting. Though they remain ineffably redolent of the bourgeoisie at their most sanctimonious and self-deceiving, academic radicals define themselves by their opposition to the bourgeois civilization that produced and now supports them. And that kind of reminds me of that. I don't know if you guys saw the thing at Yale Medical School where they had to take down all the photos of the Nobel Prize winners because it was a bunch of white guys. And then Rachel Maddow walked in and said, "What's up with the dude wall?" That was all over the news. Okay, Kimball's critique also emphasized a key feature of tenured radicalism. It is self-reproducing. Through their powers of patronage, the nomenclatura decide the prospects of new entrants and exclude anyone who deviates from the party line. No young scholar who fails to genuflect to it has any prospect of a future in academic life. What this analysis fails to explain is the appeal of the ideology this class has adopted. And that's what I've kind of been saying before. Marx may be worth rereading in a time when capitalism is entering another of its recurrent crises, but how could a turgid mishmash of Heidegger, Derrida, and Lacan have gained such a stranglehold on institutions of higher learning? And that's what I'm saying. I did a couple streams about this already, but these French guys like Lacan, Derrida, Heidegger, all of them. I'm going to include Deleuze. Who was the other one? Lyotard, the post-structuralists. Derrida was already in there. If you actually try to read this stuff, it's not interesting. Someone even came up with that, postmodern generator where you just it automatically comes up with some bibble babble that resembles what this says. And I think people have actually maybe even submitted those essays in actual universities and probably got a good grade on it. Or maybe they even submitted it to a peer-reviewed journal and it was accepted. Yeah, Judith Butler. Oh, yeah, we read that in college too. I remember that. No, I didn't say retard. I said Lyotard. Lyotard. He's another one of those French idiots. Okay. The metamorphosis and liberalism that has occurred over the past generation has played a role. From being a philosophy of tolerance, aiming at peaceful coexistence among divergent worldviews, it has become a persecutory orthodoxy that tolerates no view of the world, other than its own, blah, blah, blah. We all know this. Why has illiberal liberalism become so popular? And I don't know if I necessarily agree with this guy's take, but it's interesting to ponder. Part of the answer may be found in a short, strange, and exhaustively interesting volume that was published nearly a century and a half ago. The chief subject of Nietzsche's first book, The Birth of Tragedy, is the nature of Greek tragedy, which he interpreted as an art form that overcame the lack of meaning in human life, by reframing it as an aesthetic spectacle. The most celebrated aspect of Nietzsche's interpretation is his claim that Greek drama, oops, what just happened? Sorry, went back. Turns on an interaction between an Apollonian striving after reason and order and a Dionysian yearning for chaos and frenzy. But the most important section of the book comes when he applies his account of Greek tragedy to the secular faith of modern times, which he calls Socratism. The belief that the world becomes properly intelligible only when the human mind has rid itself of myth. And I think that is a really interesting take that I haven't heard before. And I think there may be some truth there. Socrates is the architect of the theoretical optimist, Nietzsche writes, who in his faith in the explicability of things, keyword explicability, because maybe not everything is explainable, attributes the power of a panacea to knowledge and science and sees error as the embodiment of evil. Later in the book, Nietzsche asks the reader to imagine abstract man without the guidance of myth, abstract education, abstract morality, abstract justice, the abstract state. Then we have our present age, the product of that Socratism bent on the destruction of myth. And there you go. Like there's like what is forbidden to read in school. You're not allowed to read the Bible in school. I know maybe you can in some colleges, like if you study the Bible as literature, but there was actually a lawsuit, and I think it was Idaho. There was some classical charter school that wanted to basically read the Bible in school, and there was a whole lawsuit over it, and the lawsuit came out not in favor of these people because, it's separation of church and state, right? So they weren't allowed to read it, and basically it's effectively banned in public education. Maybe not higher education, and that's a big problem. That's a really big problem because that is, the basis of all of the literature for the past 2,000 years. All of art, it's a big deal. The end result of Socratism for the West is a resolute process of secularization, a break with the unconscious metaphysics of its previous existence. In turn, the triumph of Socratism leads to a violent rebirth of mythic thinking, inspiring the frenzied totalitarian movements that Nietzsche saw coming, and which, ironically, he was blamed for inspiring. Writing when Europe's high bourgeois civilization seemed unshakably secure, Nietzsche foresaw the present crisis of the humanities. Deconstruction is Socratism in an extravagant form, an all-out effort to subvert the myths and metaphysics that underpin Western civ, not least Socrates' own faith and reason. At crucial moments, as Nietzsche notes, Socrates turned to his daemonion, divine voice that enabled him to be a true philosopher, for guidance. In 1952, the great Irish classicist E.R. Dodds presented a similar view in The Greeks and the Irrational, where the founder of Western philosophy is presented as an heir to Greek shamanism. Like Plato, Socrates was the mouthpiece of a mystical faith. It was this, not any process of, I don't know what that word means, ratiocination? Never heard that. That allowed him to assert that the true and the good were one and the same. The ideology of deconstruction aims to demystify this Socratic faith along with everything else. As Nietzsche understood, once Socratism knocks away its medical foundation, it becomes a type of nihilism. And I thought that was really interesting because a lot of, what was I saying? Sorry. if we're when I was reading the apology, sorry, my allergies are really, really bad out here. Yeah, if you're only going to ask questions and you're going to, I think what he's basically saying, if you're going to worship reason and, that's it, and not actually acknowledge the importance of myth, like Joseph Campbell or something, even from a secular perspective, like what are you left with? What are you left with? Just, and some people thought, you'd be left with science, but that's not what's happened. Ratiocination. Thank you. Check my DMs. What am I checking my DMs for? Okay, I'm checking. I'm checking my DMs. This better be good. Okay, I'll read this too. Well, I'm gonna keep going with this for a minute. Nietzsche's diagnosis is even halfway sound. Some awkward conclusions follow for the future of the humanities. Many lament the collapse of standards of truth and evidence in higher education, but what is their remedy? To restore rationality? No doubt. It seems to not have occurred to them that this may not be possible. For the most part, those who lament the condition of the humanities are evangelists for the Socratism that has led to the humanities to where they are now. For these latter-day exponents of Enlightenment liberal values, rationality can be restored by an act of will. If enough people make a commitment to being reasonable, all will be well. I'm going to scroll down to this. The Enlightenment faith and reason to which many critics of the humanities would like to return was based on the belief that once it had discarded myth, this is where it gets really important, okay? Humankind would devote itself to the pursuit of knowledge through science. This was a theoretical optimism that Nietzsche discerned at the bottom of Europe's bourgeois civilization. But abstract man proved to be an illusion, and during the 20th century, science became a vehicle for myths that made mass extermination seem rational. Turning to science as a panacea for evil today means turning a blind eye to the horrendous ends for which science has been deployed. Nietzsche did nothing else. He predicted Steven Pinker. And then he goes on to say that academia can't be fixed. And you just have to homeschool or start a new university or something. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I mean, that's really depressing if it's true. But yeah, it's and the thing is, it does seem like the old myths have just been discarded in favor of new myths that are, flat out lies and not true, and are actually just really harmful. And I think you guys know what those myths are. It's like the 1619 Project. I don't know if you heard about that, but okay, I'm going to go to Brundlefly's article since he seemed to think it was relevant. And I'm probably going to cut this off in the next 10 minutes or so. Okay. So this is from the Z blog. Normal people look at the public performance of the left and have the reaction all normal people have to irrationality. First, they will laugh or scoff at whatever the left is doing, as both reactions come from the same instinct. It is the dismissal of whatever is going on as too ridiculous to consider. A man and a sundress demanding to be called they is absurd. The kinder souls will laugh at it, while the less kind will dismiss it as vulgar degeneracy. Both reactions are justified, of course. Once we pass the initial rejection, the reaction of normal people to the cultural lunacy we see on display falls into two buckets. One group will continue to dismiss this stuff as a sign that the left is just a bunch of crazy middle-aged white women and their colored assistants trying to get attention. The cat lady factor is so strong on the left, it's hard not to focus on. Scan the crowd in Elizabeth Warren event, for example, and it looks like a clearance sale at the wine mart. Spinsters everywhere. Ugh, actually, my mother-in-law is a big Elizabeth Warren fan. I don't want my husband to hear me saying anything bad about her. Now, the other camp that forms up after the initial reaction is the people who suspect that there is a deeper motive to what they're seeing. The left has been in control of the culture for several generations now, so they cannot be all mad. Steve Saylor, for example, thinks these displays are about keeping the progressive coalition focused on the evil white men so they don't attack one another. The bad people suspect this is all part of a plot by the nefarious forces to undermine white society. There is a third option. This insane behavior is not just performance art, but an assault on rationality and order. It is an attack on the very concept of truth. After all, if it is no longer possible to tell boys from girls, then what is true? The very basics of human biology start with the fact that humans come in two sexes. The very axioms of human reality are now up for debate, and everything is up for debate, even the claims made by the left. No truth, nothing is false. The world is narrative of opinion. Take, for example, the assertion that race is a social construct, blah, blah. Okay, none of this matters. What matters to the left is that observable reality cannot be trusted. Modern left is a political implementation of the academic movement called postmodernism. Okay. I don't know where I'm going with this. Thanks, Brundle. Anyway, I should probably go hang out with my husband since he's home. I don't want to be rude, but someone else should do a stream. Thanks for listening to me read other people's blogs for an hour. No, Brundle, it was good. It was good. Do you want me to finish it? It's long. You should do a stream. I miss your streams, like I said. Only place that is equal is the cemetery. This is just getting really nihilistic. Okay. I gotta go. Yes, this is interfering with my real life. I agree with you, Mike. It's actually a problem. It ruins my motivation to go out and actually interact with real people, and that's a problem. So yeah, I'm gonna go. Bye.